quick question for you. You ever open your banking app, look at that balance, and get that little feeling of relief? You know, that thought, yes, my money, all safe and sound.
I mean, you see the digits right there on the screen. You trust the bank, right? It's your hard-earned cash just sitting there, ready for you whenever you need it. At least, that's what we think.
But let's just stop and think about that for a second. Is it really your money? What if I told you that that number on your screen, it represents something totally different from what you've been led to believe?
And here's the big plot twist. What most of us have is simply access to our money. We have permission to use it, but that is not the same thing as having absolute control over it. And believe me, that difference is everything.
So to really get this, we gotta pop the hood and see how the banking system actually works. Forget all the fancy logos and the nice buildings for a minute. When you boil it all down, a bank is basically a giant IOU machine.
You see, when you deposit money, the bank doesn't, put your cash in a little safety deposit box with your name on it. Nope. What you're actually doing is loaning your money to the bank, and in return, they give you a promise, an IOU, that says, yep, we owe you this much.
So that number you see in your app, it's basically just an entry in the bank's giant private spreadsheet, a line item that says they owe you a certain amount. You don't actually hold the money, you hold a claim on the money.
And here's the catch. Because you're playing in their system, your access to that IOU is subject to their rules. I mean, think about it. Transaction limits, getting your account frozen for a suspicious purchase, waiting days for a transfer to clear, all these things are just little reminders that you're playing in their sandbox, by their rules.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you have access. Your key is a password. But let's be real, the bank can reset that for you anytime. You're dependent. But with control, you hold the actual key, a cryptographic key that is yours and yours alone. That makes you independent.
Okay, so this system of promises and IOUs works most of the time. But what happens when the whole system is built on a really shaky foundation? Well, for that answer, all we need to do is take a quick trip back to 2008.
It all kicked off with mortgages. Banks started giving out what they called subprime loans. These were basically loans to people who, had a really high chance of not being able to pay them back. And why would they do that? Well, everyone just kind of assumed that house prices would go up forever. What could go wrong?
And this is where it gets really crazy. Wall Street took all these super risky mortgages and they bundled them all together into these super complex things called CDOs. The late, great Anthony Bourdain had the perfect analogy for it. It was like taking old, bad fish that nobody wants and hiding it in a seafood stew to sell it. They mixed up the risks so well that nobody could tell what was good and what was bad anymore.
I mean, it got so ridiculous, lending standards went out the window. Banks were literally approving what they called ninja loans. And yeah, that stands for no income, no job, and no assets. The whole system had just completely lost touch with reality. And then, the whole house of cards came tumbling down. In September of 2008, Lehman Brothers, a bank that had been around for 158 years, collapsed. Just gone, overnight. And with it, $600 billion of value just vanished. It triggered a global meltdown, all because those IOUs were built on top of other bad IOUs.
That crisis was a brutal wake-up call. It showed just how fragile a system can be when it's all based on trusting a few big institutions. And that whole mess got a lot of smart people thinking, what if we could build a system that wasn't based on trust, but on mathematical proof?
So let's talk about blockchain in the simplest way possible. Imagine a notebook, but instead of one bank owning that notebook and keeping it secret, this notebook is public. It's copied and shared across thousands of computers all over the world. Everybody can see it, which means no single person can just secretly go in and change it.
And this right here is the fundamental difference. The old system requires you to trust that a single company is keeping its private books correctly. The new system lets you verify everything for yourself on a shared, public ledger. It is a massive shift from having to trust someone to being able to see the truth. So, what does this new world mean for you and the idea of actually owning your money? Well, it really all comes down to one simple, incredibly powerful idea: the keys. If you remember only one thing from this whole explainer, please let it be this. This is the golden rule. In this new world, ownership isn't a promise or an IOU.
Ownership is proven by having a cryptographic, private key. If you have the key, you control the asset. Full stop.
The best way to think about a private key is like it's the one and only master key to a digital safe, a safe that only you can open. This is not like a password that customer service can reset for you. If someone else gets their hands on this key, they don't have to ask for permission. They just open the safe and take everything.
And that brings us to the big trade-off here. This kind of system gives you the ultimate control, right? True financial freedom. But it also puts all of the responsibility directly on your shoulders. There is no 1-800 number you can call if you lose your key. There's no undo button if you send funds to the wrong place. You become your own bank.
So all of this leaves us with a really big question to think about. As our lives get more and more digital, what does it actually mean to own something? Is it a promise you get from an institution you hope you can trust? Or is it the absolute undeniable control that you and only you possess? Understanding that difference, well, that's the key to everything.